Välkomna! Höststart, eller hur? ProHearings i augusti, då vet man att hösten är här. Fast det ser ut att bli en bra helg ändå, måste jag säga. Kul att se er här. Spännande program. 2 av de här 3 bolagen har vi ju lite extra span på, för de är på väg att skifta från lite sådär resultat, men med tillväxt ska växa. To eternity and beyond. Och båda kom just med Q2, AAC Clyde Space och Nitro Games. Båda de är på engelska och på Teams-länk. Sen kaffe, sen har vi SinterCast. Han är ju engelsman, Steve Dawson. Han kommer att vara här och sen gör jag min spaning. Jag tror vi har Steve Dawson kvar, så jag kommer att göra den på engelska därför att den spaningen handlar om saker som påverkar honom och hans bolag och då, därmed honom också. Hans apanage i alla fall. Så ser det ut. Har ni kommit ihåg att sätta mobilerna på ljudlöst?
Yes.
Inte massa pling och sådär. Vad duktiga ni är. Kan någon greppa den där dörren och bara dra igen lite grann? Tack, Olle. Vi kommer att göra lite live soundcheck här så vi ska se vad som händer och fötter. Louis?
Yes, hello.
Oh, hey. I need to switch your audio and we need your video.
Yes, I'm trying to put it. Unfortunately, I have to log in on the browser. I'm trying to make sure that this is running. Can you see me?
No.
Oh, my video is on.
I see you.
Okay.
Yeah. Now we need the audio. So, that's on our end.
Okay. Trying to share my presentation. Okay.
Testing, testing. Louis?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Damp off all.
No, will not work.
Ljudet kommer bara där. Du måste ut i högtalaren.
Can you hear me?
Yep, but in the wrong place. So that's quite a problem. Let's try again.
Okay.
Thank you. That's much
Can you hear
better.
me?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see?
Now we'll try. Let's do this right. Try the presentation mode on your presentation, so we get rid of all the PowerPoint
Okay.
buttons. Hit the bottom right. You have the presentation thingy.
Yeah, no, you should have it on presentation mode. So, give me just a second. Give me just a second.
We're doing progress with the temporary slip back.
Yes. Let me see if I can. Can you see it? Can you see the presentation now?
We love it, Louis.
You have it?
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm just gonna.
Var det att göra skärm så att inte klockan där nere kommer med? Den kommer med i sändningen.
I think we will have to let that one slip. So, yeah, Louis, just can you move out of the presentation and in again after a while?
Sorry?
Can you move out of the presentation so we get your full screen?
Sharing?
Yeah, like that.
Okay.
Very good. This will be the official start of the video we put online after the direct broadcast. We're pleased to have you here on the Teams link. Louis Gomez, CEO of AAC Clyde Space. You've been here before. We love your company, and it's exciting to see you move forward. And this presentation, do you have it with a short, opening on AAC Clyde Space and then Q2 focused?
Yes, I do. I do have some information on Q2 focused, but largely I will talk about Q2. But I do have some information. I also have some information about future programs that we are working and give an update or where we are with some of our future programs.
Okay, so you know what to do. We give you an applaud from here in advance.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see if I can. Let's see if this works. Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. As I say, I will give you a brief introduction to where the company is right now. We'll of course discuss our results for the quarter. but for those that are less familiar with AAC Clyde Space, well, we are a space company. We have been operating for about 25 years in a variety of different types of parts of the business. So we started very much as being a supplier of components and parts for the space industry. Over the years, we have actually grown into building our own satellites, launching them, and then owning and operating satellites. So we have launched more than 30 satellites, far more than 30 satellites over the last few years for ourselves and for some of our customers. And we have about 190 employees around the world. And currently, we own and operate 10 in-orbit satellites. Actually, as of last week, we own and operate 11 satellites in orbit, although one is still inside its pod waiting to be deployed. And we're very much focusing on providing solutions for the maritime tracking, for the forestry and the farming industries on Earth. And we see quite a big growth in the demand for that kind of information from farmers, from foresters, but also from ship owners and shipping authorities. As our world changes, we become more and more dependent on how much food we can produce, how much our oceans are polluted, or we are using our oceans. So there is quite a lot of demand for that kind of information. And just give you an idea of what we make. So we do space products. That is our business line that delivers components for other space companies, and also for some terrestrial companies that are doing and terrestrial organizations that are doing work with space. So, for instance, we also supply instruments for large telescopes, for large radio telescopes, particularly in the southern hemisphere. We have quite a big business around that part of the technology. And we do that because the same technology we use for that is the technology we use for weather forecasting from space. We then have a business where we do space missions. This is where we actually use those products, those components, the computers, power systems, and we bring them all together into making satellites that we then sell to our customers around the world. And then we started seeing a few years back that many of those customers would say to us, we don't actually want to own satellites because that comes with infrastructure and knowledge, and you need to know how to do it. What we really want is the service, is the data that comes from those satellites. And because of that, we started delivering data and services to customers in several models. But what we see is that is the area where we see biggest growth for our business. It's not only an area that is growing fast, but it's also an area where margins are much higher. So while on hardware, you have margins between 10 and 15% net margins, that is. In data and services, you can have margins in the 30, 40% net margin and higher even. And as such, we see that as a big engine to drive the growth of our business. And just to summarize what we are doing right now, we are providing a variety of data, as I said, to the maritime domain, to the maritime users, to farmers, and to forest managers. And we are providing that in the basis of we set the satellites, we design them, we build them, we put them in orbit, and then we provide the data and the service those operators need. And we have three models for accessing that data. We've got the subscription model, that is the one that is increasingly popular. And this is very much about supplying the data as you need it. You come to us and say, I need a certain amount of data, and we supply you that data. We have paper access. We have people that just want to access usually historical archives. So they are just interested in accessing the archive or accessing a small amount of data for a day or two, while the subscription model is usually seen as a yearly renewal or multi-year renewable subscription or data delivery. And then we've got secured capacity, that is when customers come to us ahead of time and they want to have specific access to a number of satellites for a number of years. Usually we will build specific dedicated satellites for these customers.
They will put the down payment, and we will actually build that satellite for them and then operate the satellite for a certain number of years, delivering data to them. And that's a model that is quite interesting for some organizations that are making the transition from more traditional owning your own satellites and then selling data from those satellites, and then now they don't want to own those satellites. But we are seeing quite a lot of interest in these models. And we do these from a range of locations in the world. So we have several companies. The group is made up of several companies. They tend to specialize in specific things. But of course, there is also an aspect of geographical distribution. We want to access different markets. So we have a company in the US to actually access the US market. We have a company in South Africa to allow us to access the African market. We also have partners we work with in Asia. So we have quite successful business in Japan and Korea, for instance. But these companies tend to specialize in different things. So we have companies that are producing computers, the power systems, and the attitude control systems for the satellites. And then we have a few others that are very much specializing in building satellites, and others that specialize in actually using the data from those satellites, in owning, operating, and then selling the data from those satellites. You might have seen that recently we announced that we are acquiring a company in Sweden called Spacemetric. The transaction hasn't closed yet, but that is a highly specialized company in the processing of data, imaging data, so pictures from space. And they have a long history and a long experience of actually converting pictures that the satellites take into something that can then be used on the ground to monitor forests, monitor crops, and so they will bring to the group that capability that we didn't have until now. So in terms of the results, I put the results here for the first half of the year. So the results up to now. In terms of this quarter, the second quarter was a less good quarter than what we wanted it to be. We are now at about 125 million SEK accumulated revenue for the year, with an EBIT of minus 3.8. And because of these results, we have actually given new guidance for the year. So we had originally planned to be 430 to 500 million SEK for the year. We now expect, in terms of revenue, to be on the 350 to 400. And the main reason for these have been delays with our suppliers. So we've got a few suppliers that have been late in supplying us, what means that we can't actually progress some of our projects as quickly as we wanted. We do revenue recognition as we go along, and so we will have occasionally these events where a big supplier that has one big milestone will affect quite substantially our revenue for the quarter. We also had some delays on project awards. Some of the projects that we signed in the first and second quarter of 2024 were projects that we originally were negotiating and expecting later in 2023 or right at the beginning of 2024. When they came a bit later in the year, they have actually reduced how much revenue we could take from them. But unfortunately, it's not as we can just take the people that were supposed to be working on those projects and go on to other projects. As we have teams set up, and the customers they don't tell us we are going to sign 3 months from now. They keep telling us, oh, well, we just need to sort out something with their customers in most cases. And so they are moving us on a month by month or week by week schedule. So that has affected how we are set for the year, but we are still planning a growth. So in terms of revenue, as I say, the guidance now is between 350 million SEK and 400 million SEK for the year. This is still substantial growth from last year in the 30% range. We maintain our guidance of a positive EBITDA between 5 and 10%. And we have a very strong backlog. Just to give you an idea, all this revenue is already on our backlog now. And that backlog continues to grow. We are now at 660 million SEK. and we see the market continue to be quite supportive of our business. So we see forward that despite some setbacks and some difficulties on the quarters, we see that the overall landscape for the company is still very strong. And just to show you a little bit what we have been doing, just last Friday, we launched another of our satellites for the AIS for maritime services, Sedna 1. It was launched on Transporter 11 launch. And this is the satellite is a new generation of these AIS satellites, of these automatic identification ship system ship detection satellites, and it will add quite substantial capability to our constellation for AIS. So we have this one, we have another one to be launched in October, but also on this launch, and although we didn't actually build a satellite, we built large parts of it. So our friends and colleagues at OHB Sweden actually built the Arctic weather satellite. This is a new type of satellite that is being designed, that has been designed for the EUMETSAT, the European Satellite Meteorological Satellite Organization, through the European Space Agency. And this is a satellite that will help us to predict weather much more accurately than what we are doing right now. So the objective in the future is to build a constellation of these satellites. This is the first one. And our team in Gothenburg, built the payload. As you see there, the payload, and our team very happy on the day that they shipped out that payload to OHB Sweden. And we also, in Uppsala, we actually built the computer for the satellite and the power system for the satellite. I'm very happy to say that so far what we have designed has worked fine, and it is delivering its business. And so now we look forward to the constellation that will come, and where we see quite a large potential to build several of these instruments and supply several computers and power systems to our customer. And talking a little bit in terms of the future of where we are heading. So we continue to grow our hardware business. As I say, we see quite a large potential on supplying products and components for constellations. You might have seen that we have recently announced that we signed the licensing agreement with the company to supply them, to allow them to supply our subsystems to their satellites, to use them on their satellites. And that is just one of many contracts that we continue to see in this area. We are seeing a move to bigger satellites. What is good for us, we actually design and manufacture space products that are actually to be used also on larger satellites. And as those larger satellites are used in constellations, we see great potential there. At the same time, we are growing our own proprietary constellation. So we now aim to, currently, as I said, we have 11 satellites in orbit. Our objective right now is to add another 4 for Earth observation. I'll talk a bit more about that next. And then to over the next few years, add another 12 for maritime services. And we see those as areas where we are ready, not just doing work on selling data, but actually on developing applications. And this is where we see another big opportunity for the company. So we currently have several programs running to develop applications from that data to solve problems on Earth. And we see great potential, not only in terms of the commercial market, but also getting support from governments to do that. So just to give you a flavor of what we are doing, so we are currently building a constellation of 4 Earth observation satellites. These will provide data for forests and agriculture. So they take pictures, and they take nice pictures at a resolution that is not very common at this stage, that there is a gap in the market. We identify the gap in the market, and we can now do these satellites for a much lower price than people were doing a few years back. So we can actually offer a very compelling price points to our customers. And we start these as Some of you might be familiar with a program we have running with the European Space Agency called Expansion. And through that, we have actually developed a lot of the designs that are now being used on these satellites. So these satellites will be part of that expansion program. And the design, all the design was self-funded, was part of the expansion program. But then we have built the satellites. We are funding them. And they will provide quite substantial amounts of data. And we signed, over the last month, we actually signed our first contract for data. So this is with Scottish Forestry. This is an organization that manages the forests of Scotland. And they actually contracted us to provide a service. It's not just about data. This is about us actually giving them maps of areas of forest that are under stress. So they want to identify stressed areas that are being attacked by insects in forests, and we can actually do that from space. So we did quite a lot of work in developing the product, and we are now in the process of actually just waiting for the satellites to go up, and then we can start the process. So the first launch of this satellite will be in 2025. I had originally earmarked this for 2024, but our key supplier announced that they couldn't supply for their own reasons. They couldn't supply their part of this satellite in time. So we are now moving to 2025, but we already have a launch booked and everything. And this is what these satellites will do. This is imaging forest, and so these are images from other satellites that we downgraded to look like these ones, like the ones we are going to get. So these are from satellites that are actually more used for military applications than for this kind of forestry monitoring. But we then actually get that data and we make it look like the data we are going to get from our satellite. This is for the prototyping. And what you see on the left is those images, those original images. These are images that come from satellites, so in the visible bands and in the near infrared. And you then use these data. You use the colors that the satellite detects to effectively find out the areas of the forest that are being affected by, in this case, by a beetle insect. And what you see on the two images on the right, on the two pictures on the right, is then the output of our algorithm. So we develop the algorithm that actually detects these stressed areas of forest, and then you can just give a map to the managers of those forests, and they know what to do. And as we see our climate changing, as we see different temperatures in our forests around the world, we are seeing that many of these forests are now under threat from pests and from disease that were not common 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so there is quite a lot of interest in being able to monitor these forests large scale. This job is done by helicopter. You can imagine that an helicopter sees small areas of land. It costs quite a lot of money, and it is not very good for the environment to fly helicopters continuously to do this work. So now we can do this from space. And there is a lot of interest, not only, so we have one contract on this one, and through that contract, we now have several people around the world talking to us and asking us, oh, can we have something similar? So this is actually something that we see as a great potential. And at the same time, we are developing applications for the farming industry. So, and they use very similar techniques. We use very similar techniques to do that. And at the same time, as I said, we continue our maritime services constellation. So we already have a constellation of satellites that do ship tracking. That is used. You see an image there on the right, one example taken on one day over Europe, detecting ships on the coasts of Europe, of Northern Europe, and we are actually going forward on that technology, not only adding more satellites. As I said, we launched one last Friday to expand our constellation, but we are also developing the next generation of these systems called VDES that actually allows not only the detection of ships, but allows us to communicate back to them. And this is quite a lot of interest, because not only allows an increase in the safety at sea, because by basically allowing us to communicate alerts to the vessels, to the ships, but it also allows us to do things like identification of ships. So Coast Guards are very interested in this technique because they will be able to actually challenge the ship when it says, "I'm such and such." They can ask, "Really? Prove that to me." So this is something that we are seeing growing quite substantially. It's expected VDES will be a mandatory technology on board vessels by about 2025, 2026. It's currently going through the technical committees of the International Maritime Organization. And we want to be the first ones to provide the service. Currently, we have one satellite in orbit already with this capability that is now undergoing testing. It's just a demonstration. We will have another one in October, so the next satellite will also include the VDES terminal. And we are working with a customer and partner on a constellation of satellites already. And our ambition is to then actually have more satellites of our own. And as I say, there is quite a lot of interest for this technology, not just to track ships, but like, for instance, on the Oscar project we are doing currently with several companies in the UK, where we are actually developing techniques using this technology to monitor offshore wind farms. So this is an area that is growing quite substantially. And there are several services that we can provide from satellites to help monitor and manage those farms, those wind farms. So again, we are not just providing data, we are also developing applications, we are also developing the downstream capability to use this data. And so I will close here. I'll stop here. Mostly, I hope I have given you a feeling for where the company is and where we are going. We continue to strongly believe in our strategy. We have the capability, we have the people, we have the knowledge, and we have the experience to grow the different parts of our business, continuing to grow hardware business, but also growing quite substantially our data and services business. This is an area that we see having great potential for us and is already starting to deliver. So thank you very much. I'll open the floor to questions.
Louis, can you? Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm back.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the audio. You get a poor microphone feed, but it will be better for the online viewers and for us as well. But just ask if you don't pick up a question. I feel a bit bad, Louis, because I mean, you're quite a company, and you've come a long way. But this is also 2024. This is the moment when you go from the red to the black, you know, for EBITDA and for EBIT, and we were expecting that for Q2. Now you start to see where I'm getting at. That for us as investors, we, as exciting as things are, we live by the numbers and we also die by the numbers, at least our portfolios. Unless our name is Mike Lynch, I guess. Sorry about that. You know Mike Lynch? Yeah, that's the guy who went down on the Baisen sailboat. But back from sailboats to AAC Clyde Space. So your Q2 was surprising. We were, and quite a few of us, I think, were expecting, you had such a nice track record of revenues and sales going up quarter to quarter, but you hit us with a cold number, minus 29%. That said, even so, your cash flow was in line with a much higher sales number. So that saved your bank account. So it doesn't appear to be an immediate risk for you asking for more money from shareholders. So now I've given you the low sales, the high cash flow, and I know the thing sorry, I will release that. Yes, please talk some about the Q2 revenues, cash flow, and why and how, and what to look forward to in Q3 and Q4.
So, yes, I would be lying if I said that I thought it was a stellar performance or that I liked that the second quarter. We have had, as occasionally happens, and particularly in space programs that tend to be quite large and have the cycles are not really quarterly. Many of these projects have cycles that are longer. And as I said during the presentation, we have coming together of two different things. So we had on a couple projects, we had suppliers that were late delivering to us. And what that means is that our revenue that was supposed to come in that second quarter will have to be recognized later in the year. So it didn't disappear; it just moved to the right. And in many cases, we have actually done the work internally. We have done the work, so our teams have been working on this. But because we need that part or that component coming from the customers, it's a supplier. It moved. This is something that has happened before. I would love to say that will never happen again, but it is something that on occasions in our business happens. Between quarters, there can be movement on some milestones. We are dependent on other people. Likewise, the other thing that affected us on this quarter was signing new contracts. I usually joke with people that there are many things I can do, but the one thing I cannot do is to go with a gun to the head of the customers and force them to sign. So they sometimes have their own financing rounds, they have their own financing entities, and those might be late in financing. So we had several projects, quite large projects, that we expected at the close of last year or the beginning of this year that actually only came on the late first quarter or even on the second quarter. Now, what that affects us is our ability to make revenue to recognize revenue out of those projects. As I said, this also has an impact on our efficiency because it means that while we are waiting for those projects, I can't really take the teams out and put them working on something else because the project is about to begin. There is a certain uncertainty. So those two things came together and made our second quarter particularly bad. Now, I expect to recover. As I said, we have that revenue already on our books. We have done quite a lot of work with our suppliers to solve those problems. That revenue didn't disappear. That income that didn't disappear, that actually is coming. It's just later. So what we are doing is accelerating many of the processes now, many of the work, so that we can have a much better third quarter and a much better fourth quarter. And as I say, that revenue is already on the books. So we are not having to go. We are not expecting any more to actually meet those numbers. But of course, our sales teams continue to win new contracts. We have several contracts to win. So one thing that is very important for us, and you mentioned, is to go into black numbers, to go into actually positive EBITDA, and that is something that I've made very clear to our teams that we are to protect. That is our objective for the year, and everyone is very focused on doing that. Even if we have a reduction on our revenue for the year, as I said, the guidance now is 350 to 400 million SEK. That has to be done also on a positive EBITDA. And that is quite key for us. And of course, maintaining our cash flow. Cash in the bank is very important. It allows us the stability and the independence to continue to do our business without needing extra financing. So those are targets that the entire management team has. I spent one day with my management team yesterday, going through all the detailed numbers. It's something I do on specific sites. I do now on a weekly basis, but also we do it on a monthly basis, and we go through these, and everyone is very clear about that. And yes, the work is there, the orders, the backlog is there, and we are now in a more stable position with some of our suppliers. Some of these issues that I mentioned have been resolved. So I fully expect to recover, not totally, but to recover quite well over the next couple of quarters.
You are guiding on sales, and even though you revise it slightly downwards, your Q3 and Q4 should be way higher. That's your own
Yes.
guidance. Now, I know you don't guide on cash flow, but I still would like to, maybe I didn't hear it right, but how did you manage the good cash flow with the lower sales in Q2?
Well, there is actually one thing that comes together is if we don't do certain progress, we don't have to pay. If our suppliers don't do their progress, we also don't have to pay them. So yes, we can keep quite high levels of cash, but we are also very careful with when we are doing these projects of actually remaining cash flow positive. So this is something that we always try on our projects to make sure. But there is an aspect that if they are not delivering to us, we also don't have to pay them. So that protects our cash flow when the revenue is not there. And this year we also had some injections of cash, one of which was due to an unfortunate incident with one of our satellites that failed. But we have an insurance claim on that, so that injected quite a lot of cash in the company. What helped us? I don't see it as effectively what that did was compensate for the loss of that satellite and the revenue we would get from it over the years. But we basically got some advanced revenue, so that also helped.
I'm kind of sometimes the suspicious type, so I looked carefully in your counted the number of shares in AAC Clyde Space, but Q2 had no single new share issue.
No.
Yeah, just to make sure.
No. You'd know of that if we had to.
Yeah, yeah, I guess. Okay, so I'll grab the microphone here and see if we find someone in the audience. Here.
Regarding the backlog, I assume there are many reasons behind that, but what is a normal backlog and how are you going to go about to bring it down? And when can we expect it to be brought down? And in other industries, companies are sometimes reluctant to take on new orders when the backlog is too large. Is that something that might hit you?
No, we try. Okay, it's a fairly complex. Aspect because it depends very much on which part of the business you are talking about. So if we are talking in products, large backlogs there are usually easy to handle because we even have, in many cases, we tend to have on the shelf components. So many times the amount we can very easily actually deliver that to our customers. Satellites is different. Satellites can be quite. If we are talking about missions, it can be, yes, you can have too many in your books, and it can be too difficult to actually deliver all of them, particularly if they require a lot of engineering. It's not so much about production, it's about engineering. And we have had a few examples of that over the last few years where we had too many satellites going through the books at the same time. So there we would be more cautious in terms of the number of satellites that we have going through design, more than build. And on some occasions, we tell our customers we can't do it now. We will have to wait for 6 months. We might have to wait for 12 months. We are not at that situation. We are not in a situation where we are over. But I would say that if you came to us and said, I want a satellite for tomorrow, I probably would have to tell you it can't be tomorrow. It will have to be in a few months from now. So that is how we usually use services. Data and services is very easy to scale, and so it doesn't have that kind of problem. And actually, a lot of backlog, or some of our backlog, is already looking long in time because it is about services, and that is services that are delivered over 2, 3, 4 years time. In terms of an ideal backlog value, I wouldn't. I don't think I've ever thought in terms of that. I would say that the level that we've got right now is one we are comfortable that we can deliver in time. So as I say, probably about half of that is designed to be delivered for the rest of this year, and the rest delivered next year and the years after. So I would say that this is a reasonable, is an okay level of backlog for what we have in terms of facilities and people. It might vary a little bit in terms of the different business lines, but it is. I wouldn't say it's a comfortable. We don't aim to do comfortable, but it's a good backlog that we see, and as I say, is something that we can deliver. We are confident we can deliver this.
I mean, backlog is a negative number, but it's actually an order book, so that's a good thing. Yes. But also, Rutger, I agree with you. At some point, an order book has to be realized into invoices and revenues. And some of us might remember Lehman crash 2008, 2009, 2008. Everybody felt so good. And Scania and Volvo, the order backlog for trucks were sky high, 3 years production, and then it just disappeared. So of course, it's an order book, so it's a good thing.
I think the point, as I say, is it depends on the business. So for instance, on products, this is realized much quicker, so we can actually deliver that backlog much quicker. Missions, you're talking about a year and a half, 2 years, so it's a longer backlog. It requires longer time. And then on data, we try to go for longer contracts. So we are talking several multi-year contracts. That's what we like. So the backlog there has to be delivered over that period.
This is one more question, and that's from you have to a big part a highly engaged, shareholder base, fan base even, and the discussion we've seen in some places is that if Q3 and Q4 picks up quite a bit what you're guiding for, and that's the coming 6 months, given also the low valuation of your stock, it's hard to understand that it's so low, and of course it's been a struggle for you and it goes a long time. But all that said, now would be the time when insider buying from management and board would look really good, and a lot of people look for that, but they haven't seen too much so far. So what's your comment?
I can't talk for my colleagues, and definitely I can't talk for my board. For my point, I did some insider buys last year. I'm very limited on what I can buy. We are pretty much constantly under some sort of insider logs. So we have had quite a lot. Is the fact that the company has done quite a lot. But as I say, I'm always happy, and it's something that is my objective. But I can't talk for my colleagues, and I definitely can't talk for the board. So that's a question that I would direct at them, what their intentions are.
I wasn't expecting anything else. I just needed to get that on camera. It was even an assignment from one of them that was emailed to us. We're running low on time. Someone has a quick question and also a quick answer. Okay, follow up from you.
Just a question about the insurance policy. You touched upon it in your presentation. Can you confirm that your satellites are insured, so there will not be a major hit if any one of them fails from a technical point of view?
Yes, our satellites are insured. So we insure our satellites. The level of insurance depends on the satellite. So some satellites are launched at the beginning, are insured only for the launch phase. The current ones, the ones you are thinking of, they are actually insured for failure. In some cases, the insurance might be too expensive, and it is actually cheaper to launch a second satellite over time. So we might not always insure satellites for failure, but that is an exception that we try not to do. But the market has been very volatile over the last year, so we have had To be frank, we have had some difficulties sometimes in placing some of the insurance. So our preference is, yes, we fully insure the spacecraft. On some occasions, the policies might be restrictive, but those are exceptions.
Okay, Louis, we are on final time, overtime even. Thank you a lot. We do look forward very much to your Q3 and Q4 and to eternity and beyond from that, of course. But we start with the second half of 2024. Hope to see you again. Hope to see you here in person. And
Yes.
have a great continued Friday. Thank you from ProHearings.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Who do we have here?
Hello.
Josie, hello.
How are we doing?
We're doing fine. I apologize for your end of the audio. You're from a mic, but the broadcast is doing it better.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. We ran a bit over time there on the previous company. But now you are here and you're back at ProHearings,
Yes.
Nitro Games. But you are not in Finland, are you?
Actually, I am. I just came here early this morning from Germany, where we had an event called Gamescom. That's the largest gaming event here in Europe, with I think more than 300,000 people attending. So a lot of business development this week.
So with you this time, we have scaled down to shorter formats. So we better get right onto it, and I leave the show to you. Let's just see so you can flip up your PowerPoint, and it looks nice on this end.
Yes.
Hey, 100%.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you, Jussi. Show is yours.
Yeah. So here we go. Great to meet you all. And for those of you who are not familiar with Nitro, I'm Jussi Tähtinen, the CEO and co-founder here in Nitro Games. We are your powerhouse from Finland when it comes to action and shooter games. And that's something where we focus on. And the vision that we have is that we want to be the best company in this field across the different platforms out there. We want to be the company that you think of when you think of action and shooter games. And in Nitro, why we have focused on this category specifically is that action and shooter games have always been this type of genre from different generations of gaming platforms and different type of gamers that always surface and somehow seem to find their ways on top of the lists. So it is something where we see a lot of long-term potential ahead of us and also, of course, behind us. And here in Nitro, we're based in Finland. We have 2 studios here, and we are roughly 100 people in total, out of which half, so 50, we have here in Finland, and the rest are scattered here and there and everywhere in our partner studios, contractors, freelancers, and so on. And we mostly operate on the European and North American time zones because many of our big B2B customers and partners are in North America. So that's how we've distributed the team as well. And Nitro as a company, we're one of the oldest game companies here in Finland. We've been around since 2007. And our background goes all the way from PC strategy games to a little bit of console games and mobile games, especially in the previous 10 years, we've been doing a lot. And over the previous few years, we've been again expanding more and more to other platforms as well. And the secret sauce in our way of operation is that we have always been super flexible. So Nitro is the type of company that is able to ramp up quickly when we, for example, have some new projects, we're able to ramp up quickly and assign teams to work on it. And we also have a lot of shared technologies and processes between different things that we work on, so that allows us to be super flexible, especially towards our customers in B2B. And our business is basically twofold. On one hand, one part of our strategy is to build our own games. And this is something where we continuously iterate with new game ideas in development. We also look into game ideas from third-party developers that we are in close contact with. And the goal here is to master the category of action and shooter games. This is well in line with our vision, as we want to also not just produce the best games, but to make sure that players around the world get to enjoy them. And for this purpose, we also collaborate with the best partners, for example, in publishing and marketing or in branding from time to time, to maximize the potential that we have here. In general, what Nitro is known for is high quality games. We make great looking games that play great, but also for getting great reviews, great ratings, and winning awards and featurings from time to time. The second leg of our strategy is what we call our B2B service business. And this is where we also operate on action and shooter games, but we sell our expertise to our partners who need something from Nitro. And at the moment, we have two big projects on this front. On one hand, we work with an evergreen, massive shooter game called Warframe by Digital Extremes. We work on that one. We just launched the iOS version, so on Apple iPhones earlier this year, and now we continue to support the game live and moving forward. And then we work with Netflix on an unannounced game based on their IP, and this is something that we started end of last year, so this project is still in pre-production. Throughout our long history, for more than 15 years, we work with some of the biggest brands and game publishers and developers out there. So this is part of the business that has been going on for a long time. And of course, we are seeking to continue expand it moving forward as well. In recent times, this year, last year, and a little bit the year before that, we've been focusing more and more on expanding to other platforms outside of mobile also on this front. So both of our legs in our strategy, the games business and the B2B service business, are very much headed towards distribution on different platforms, but with a very specific focus on the category of action and shooter games. And how this ties into our overall strategy, here's a timeline. So our current strategy period started from the beginning of 2017. And in 2017, we wanted to take a big leap from a game development company into being a full powerhouse with everything from game concepting to game production to game publishing to live services to the games that are out there. And for that purpose, we also needed some capital to build these capabilities, and we listed the company in 2017 at Nasdaq First North Growth Market there in Stockholm. During the first 5-ish years of the strategy phase, we've been building our capabilities, game portfolio, technology, and expanding the deals we have and so on. And the first phase in our strategy concluded end of last year, when during the first quarter we reached break even. Now during this year, we're continuing from there. We're generating growing revenues, growing profits, and at the same time, we focus on stable growth. With stable growth, we mean that in this year's time, we want to make sure that we have a solid base to build on towards next year and the years after that through our vision, which is to be the powerhouse for action and shooter games. So far, we're doing really well operatively on this front. And this is also something that we are now looking into turning into more going in the direction of maximizing the potential with what we have. But so far, 2024 has been pretty damn solid for us. And if we look at the first half in a nutshell, in our games business, in addition to serving our players with new updates and scoring some awards and featurings and so on, one of the biggest moves was with Autogun Heroes, where we signed a publishing agreement with one of the biggest publishers out there called Supersonic from Unity. I think 2023, they were the second biggest in terms of downloads globally from all the publishers out there. And with them, we have an arrangement where Nitro focuses on the game development and providing live services to the players, and Supersonic brings in the marketing power and the financing of the marketing to scale up the game. We started the collaboration now during the second quarter, and we've already gone through some first tests and iterations in that, and already seen some improvements in the results. And what we're doing now is we're chasing towards the so-called scalability and really pushing forward with the marketing moving forward. In the B2B service business, we've also been busy during the first half of the year. We signed a follow-up deal with Digital Extremes for the Warframe project. We launched the game on iOS together with them. We moved forward with the Netflix project from concepting phase to pre-production phase. We've also worked a little bit with our older IPs and making smaller deliveries on those to our different customers. And financially, what this means is that we saw record revenues during the first half of the year, and also a positive result with a little bit more than 1 million euros in EBITDA from the first 6 months. What this means now, as we move to the second half of the year and beyond, of course, is that we continue further commercializing our games portfolio. Autogun Heroes we already signed on mobile, and what we're looking out to do next is to see what other opportunities we have around that IP and that franchise as we go forward. We're also seeking to figure out the long-term plan for Nerf Super Blast, and of course, behind the scenes, working on getting some new games in our portfolio for years to come. In B2B service business, we definitely want to continue working with our 2 fantastic partnerships that we have with Digital Extremes and with Netflix. But in addition to that, we're of course active in business development, seeking further growth and potential new opportunities. And on the financial side, we definitely want to maintain the focus on the bottom line, so on profitability. So that remains in focus throughout the year, of course. And at the same time, we want to continue our step-by-step reduction of debt in our balance sheet, but also we are more and more looking into making investments in new product, both inside Nitro and potentially third-party projects as well. So overall, the second half of the year will continue pretty much in a logical extension to the first half of the year, which was already pretty great. And then financially, where does this growth come from? In here you can see our numbers for the first half of the year. So we made roughly 5.6 million euros in revenues, which is an increase of 66% compared to last year. This increase comes mostly from having larger projects in our B2B service business. And why they are larger is because of our expansion to multi-platform. So that is a direction where we are continuing moving forward as well. Also, part of the revenue growth comes from our games business, where we started to commercialize and capitalize on Autogun Heroes, the game that we started to launch last year. So now we have 2 active games in our portfolio generating revenues. Those things, that top line revenue growth combined with very strict cost control that we've been doing, thanks to the scalable team model that I introduced in the beginning, has allowed us to increase our profitability step by step. And this is a direction where, of course, we're wanting to head moving forward as well. And that gives a brief introduction to Nitro. Thank you for tuning in. And I understood that, Lars, you might maybe have some questions for us, or maybe the audience has something.
Both, I think. Let's hit that. And could you release your presentation?
Yes.
We get you on the big screen with the big beard. And the hoodie. I have one as well, small, much smaller. So you did quite a solid Q2, and I'll run some questions that might be, stupidly basic. But if we start with your deal with Netflix, I mean, we congratulated you before. It's a major player, and the view mostly to the audience is Netflix top row back on our TV. That's games now, maybe on your TVs as well. They go another way, it seems, than Max, Amazon Prime, Apple Plus. Max and Prime, I know, go live sports, and make a kill there. Viaplay got killed in Sweden. some months ago. But back to that, is that your question A? Is it your impression as well that Netflix is making a big move into games, or is this just something they add? My thinking is they wouldn't put it top row for all the subscribers unless they're doing a major thing out of it. And number two, is Warframe live right now on Netflix? Can we go home and find it and play it?
Okay, good question or questions. If we first talk about Netflix and games, I think it's clear to everyone that at the moment when we look at the whole global entertainment thing, things are very much in online platforms. Like everyone knows that we go less to movie theaters than what we used to do. We buy less physical products, whether they're related to movies, TV or games, but we also spend less and less time watching TV. And I think that when it comes to gaming and Netflix, and they have been very open about these things in public as well, it's definitely a bigger push. They have been investing in acquiring different studios, and like you mentioned, there's already games visible on their channel in the or in their service in the top row. And I think it's a very good long-term move. And why I think that it's a good move to combine streaming entertainment like movies and TV and games is because it's all about the same DNA of entertainment. What I mean with that is that very often you see the same IPs, same franchises, same characters and so on in movies, in TV series, in games. So it's all tying together because of the same target consumer. So it makes all the sense in the world to tie that consumer into your platform, whether it is movies or games or TV or what have you they want to consume. So I definitely see that as a big push and especially a longer term push in the future. And then you asked about Warframe. That is currently available in the Apple App Store. They have publicly announced that they are planning to roll out a version on Android also moving forward. And of course, it's available on PC and Xbox and PlayStation and also on Nintendo Switch.
Okay, so when can we play a Nitro game on our Netflix account?
We will talk about those things when they happen. So we haven't technically announced any dates yet or anything like that.
Okay. Fair enough and clear enough. And I know I've grilled Jussi before on Netflix. He says nothing.
Yeah.
His hands are tied, at least virtually.
Yeah.
And legally, even worse. So let's move on to the launch of Autogun Heroes. We discussed that, and our understanding is it's a freemium game. It's free to download, and it needs lots of users, and then the users can tweak their game by buying things. So is that correct?
Yes. So how that thing works is really simple. So if you're in the Autogun Heroes, you can just go into the App Store and download it for free, and boom, you're playing it. And if you haven't heard about the game, then you're going to get exposed to the marketing done by Supersonic from Unity, which gives you a direct link to download the game. So that doesn't cost anything. So then the players get into the games, they start enjoying the game, and basically how we then make money if we give the game for free is twofold. One, in this premium model, we display ads within the game. These are something that we are not pushing ads in your face, like in TV, for example, that we interrupt the fun and force you to watch ads. But these are things that during the gameplay, we have created different paces where you're taking a breath before you go into the next room full of action and shooting activities against these monsters in the game. And during those breaks, if you want to watch an ad, you can do it. If you don't, you can skip it. And if you watch an ad, we give you little boosts into the gameplay. So you can maybe play a little bit better match if you watch an ad. So we get money by displaying those ads in-game. That's one part of the monetization. The second part is what we call in-app purchases, microtransactions ranging from few dollars to even close to $100 a piece. These are things that the customers buy from the in-game shop, and through the credit cards they already have registered on Apple App Store or Google Play App Store. And these microtransactions then again give the players different type of boosts in the game. So you can either throw in time to progress in the game and become better and better and make sure that you have all the greatest armor, all the greatest gadgets and characters and heroes and all that. Or you can invest a little bit money to hopefully make it a little bit easier for you. So that's the way it works. And as a nature, these premium games are such where we are not that much seeking to make money on day one. So when you start playing the game, we're not really pushing to take money from you today, but we're trying to make this game a habit for you that you play for days and weeks and months to come. And that's why we constantly give new things for the players to enjoy, and we have live events in the game. We have pretty steady flow of updates with new features and things to do in the game. So it's not just about one-off entertainment, but more like trying to convert users into having a habit of enjoying the game on a daily basis for months to come.
Yes, but I guess you agree that the supersonic landscape and the games landscape, it's hugely competitive. So Autogun Heroes have to point the gun at hundreds of competitors too, I guess, to make it big.
Definitely, and that's what makes the game launching and operating so expensive. So I'm sure you remember last year we started the launch phase for the game on our own. We invested in acquiring those users and pushing the game forward, and we saw some great results and generated revenue and saw the big potential in the game. But we also at that point knew that we cannot keep investing moving forward in the marketing and putting the game out there in front of millions of players, because we're not yet in that scale as a company and we want to focus on delivering profits. So therefore we discussed with a lot of different publishers out there and teamed up with Supersonic from Unity, because they then again have both the experience and the pockets to do the marketing side of things. And that's how we're collaborating.
So I guess one way as a shareholder, new shareholder, investor into Nitro Games to look at you would be that you're a powerhouse games consulting shop with some sugar on top that might make it really big.
Yes, and I think that's how you should look at the two legs in our strategy. So the games portfolio and the B2B service business. So the B2B service business is the part of the business that brings the stability, and of course it's profitable business when we sell our services to third parties. And short term it gives us more steady revenue streams, it increases our reputation, it allows us to get better and better people in Nitro and overall to grow. Of course, in the longer run, all such projects are also opportunities to hit the jackpot and be part of something really big, which can then lead into different type of deals with the same partners moving forward. So all of these also have the big potential in the future. And in addition to that, some of those profits we invest in building new games, which then again are games that we can capitalize on our own or sign these partnership deals around those games. And those are more on the category of that hockey stick generation. And as of now, we do that in a way that these two combined deliver top line revenue growth and focus on the profitability.
Okay. Fair enough and great. Time flies.
It does.
I'll actually, it's also Friday today. So I guess playing a shooter game and having a glass of wine, that would be severely detrimental for my reaction time, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely yes, because you can keep your hands occupied while you're playing, but then when you're watching one of those ads and generating a little bit of money to us, then you can have a sip of wine maybe.
Ah, that's a premium service. Hey,
Yes.
Jussi, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming to ProHearings.
Thank you, my pleasure, and have a great weekend everyone. Bye-bye.
Okej, det är övertid så det ska finnas kaffe där ute och vi drar över lite grann, så 10:49. För att göra det ännu mer spännande så har vi Steve Dawson i en taxi från Flen. Tåget stannade, men en taxi kan jag också köra. Så 11:12 eller något sånt där siktar vi på. coffee break is over. Team's presentation is over for this time. I don't think forever, though. They're firmly here to stay. Another company that's here to stay and with a great history. The only way is up. That's SinterCast. And we're pleased to have you back. Steve Dawson, CEO of SinterCast, and you'll give us an update and an outlook. So I rest my case, sir. The show is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so good morning. And Lars, thank you for that nice invitation and the nice introduction. The timing is perfect for us. We actually published our second quarter report just on Wednesday of this week. And it was more or less a year ago that we were here. It was September of last year. And so what I'd like to do is start with a really quick summary to show our progress over the last 12 months. And we can do that with reference to our first half results. You see here in the first column from the first half of 2024, and in the second column last year, and the factor. So our revenue is up by 16%. Our operating result is up strongly, 61%. We've grown the revenue. We've also reduced the cost side, so we have a double benefit there. Operating margin up 39%. The earnings per share, again, we took that from two sides. The revenue was up, and in the autumn of last year and earlier this year, we made a share buyback, so we reduced the denominator. So the earnings per share are up 34%. Cash flow from operations up 41%. The dividend, this year we've provided an ordinary dividend of 5.5 crowns per share with an extraordinary dividend of 0.6, so that's 6.10, and it is up 11%. And the root of it all is the series production. Yeah, the bigger our series production, the bigger the revenue, and our series production over the last 12 months is up 13%. So we've had a really good year. We've had, as Lars says, another really good year. So with that as the starting point, let's back up and introduce SinterCast. So we have developed a technology that enables the production of a new type of iron called compacted graphite iron. Compacted graphite iron, CGI, is stronger and stiffer than the normal iron. The main application is in engines. And because of the higher strength and stiffness and durability of CGI, the car and truck companies can push the engines harder. It means higher pressure, higher temperature, and therefore more efficiency. So we can build smaller engines that have the same performance of the previous generation larger engines. So our engines are smaller and lighter, and they're more fuel efficient, and therefore, of course, they're cleaner. I'll show you in the next slide the type of vehicles that we work with, but think of large vehicles. We are mostly heavy-duty trucks, and in North America, pickups. So these are the vehicles that use a lot of fuel, and if you can make a contribution to them, you will also save a lot of fuel. So we make really significant CO2 savings, and I'll come back to that later in the presentation. We don't actually produce the material. Yeah? Think of us more like a software house. We've developed a technology, and we provide a service to the foundries who make the castings and then sell them on to the car and truck companies. So we are a classic tier 2 supplier. We've grown up to satisfy all definitions of high volume production. Our technology is currently used for the production of about 1.5 million engines per year, and it's a royalty-based business model. So every time the foundry ships a casting to the car or truck company, they also make a payment to SinterCast. More than 95% of our revenue is recurring. About 2/3 of that comes from a production fee or the royalty payment, and 1/3 of it comes from the consumable sampling cup. And in the top picture, you can see a picture of our sampling cup. It's about the size that you can hold in your hand, and they immerse it into liquid iron at 1,400 degrees Celsius. It takes a sample that's about the size of a golf ball, and we allow that iron to solidify And based on the way that it solidifies in our little sampling cup, we know how the entire batch of iron will solidify, and we can make some adjustments to it before they cast the product. As I said, satisfying all definitions of high volume, and we're currently shipping about 200,000 sampling cups per year. And if you do that math, it's more than 550 samples per day. And we're doing that in 12 different countries around the world. So starting here from our home base in Sweden, we've had a really good development over the last 30 years. Let's look at the type of vehicles that we are producing. It's mostly heavy-duty commercial vehicles. Currently, that's 53% of our production. The picture is from Scania. We do 3 engines with Scania. We then have the big super-duty pickup trucks in North America. So, to put it in perspective, I guess that most of you will have a 1.5 or 2-liter engine in your car. Yeah? So the big ones that we do for commercial vehicles are 13-liter, more or less. The ones that we do for the big Super Duty pickup trucks are 6 or 7 liters. And then you see on the far right, this is the F-150. It's the best-selling vehicle in North America. And we do the base engine on that. It's 3 liters, but the volume is fantastic. So we make more than 1,000 per day, every day of the year. We also do some smaller pickup trucks and SUVs, and we do off-road equipment. So it's trains, it's large marine vessels, stationary power generation, construction, agriculture, that type of thing. Yeah? But what you see in this is that well more than 90% of our production is for large vehicles. Lars said that we go up, and this is a good proof of that. This is our production trend over the last 15 years, so from 2007 until today. And it's been a strong growth. Like any company, there are always some bumps in the road, but a very positive trend. And you can approximate it with a straight line. And indeed, if you do the math, our compounded annual growth over the last 10 years is 9.1%. And over the last 15 years, 14.6%. And I mentioned that there are always some bumps in the road, and I'd like to talk about that in more detail. So you see, back in 2008-9, the financial crisis, our production went down by 58%. Yeah? And the whole industry recovered from that. We had new products coming on stream, and they helped to grow out of the bottom. And you see that it took about 6 quarters, so more or less a year and a half to recover from that. More programs come on stream, back to growth. In 2012-13, there was a 13-liter engine that we were doing for Navistar in the United States, and it stopped production. Our volume reduced by 25% as a result of that. But again, new things come on stream, back to growth, and you carry on. The next one is, of course, COVID. And we had this sharp shock, as everyone did. Our volume went down by 54%. And you can see that we got more or less back to the starting point after about a year and a half, and fully back just under 3 years. What we announced in our second quarter report, just on Wednesday of this week, is that we now have another program that will stop production. It will stop at the end of this month. And we said that that will affect our volume by about 12.5%. So we're going to have another one of these dips. It's a completely normal thing. Every program has an end of life. Every business has a churn rate. So we will be down a little bit in the next quarters, but new things will come on stream, back to growth, and we'll carry on. We can talk about what things are going to help that recovery. We're doing a new engine for Scania and the Traton Group. When we first started that production, we said that it would give 1 million extra engine equivalents per year. We're not quite halfway through the ramp on that program. So over the next couple of years, it will bring us about 500,000 new engine equivalents, which will completely recover from this program that's stopping. We also have a new program starting with First Automobile Works, FAW, in China. They say that they will begin sales of those vehicles early in 2025. So we expect toward the end of this year and in the beginning of next year that will start to ramp up. So we have two very clear programs in the pipeline that will be the root of the recovery, and a lot of other things. So that's from the production side. We also have revenue from new installations. In fact, we have 56 installations around the world. We typically have about 8 million Swedish crowns of installation revenue per year. And at the moment, the installation pipeline is really strong. And we have said that through 2024 and 2025, that we will beat our historical average. So while the volume may go down, the installations this year will step in and help to maintain the revenue. So we have a strong outlook. We were 2.4 million at the half. And since then, we've already had new installation commitments for another 2.2 million. And I'm confident that we get up above 8 million before the end of the year. It's normally the way. There's a lot of discussion in the first half of the year, and then everyone's rushing to try to get things finished before the end of the year. And we see that trend clearly again in 2024. So I'm confident that we have a little bit of a downturn, but that the growth will carry on. And our published target is that we'll maintain this double-digit growth rate through 2030. Currently, we forecast that in 2026, we'll reach the 5 million engine equivalent milestone. So today, you can see from the plot that we're at 4 million, and we'll go down a little bit. And in 2026, we will have fully recovered and grown to 5 million. And out in 2029, we forecast that we will meet the 7 million engine equivalent milestone. So absolutely maintaining that double-digit growth around 10% per year compounded. Now, 95% or more of our revenue comes from the series production. So when we have double-digit growth in the series production, we also have double-digit growth in the revenue. And you can see it here that over the last 10 years, our historical average is exactly 10%. At the first half of 2024, we've added in the rolling 12-month, and you can see that trend continuing. But what's really impressive about SinterCast, we are a small company. We're 28 people, most of them sitting in Katrineholm, supporting this production. Our revenue is 4.8 million per employee. That's based on the first half of this year. And our profit is 1.5 million Swedish crowns per employee. It makes us one of the most profitable companies at Nasdaq Stockholm. And as we continue to increase the revenue with this double-digit growth, and we've already said that we're going to have stable cost side over the next 5 years, and that will just continue to grow. Yeah. Last year, we had an operating margin at the end of the year of 31.8%. We've published our financial targets for 2028, and we say that we will get above 40%. I'm absolutely sure that we do that, and indeed, I think we beat it strongly. So we have our internal ambition and our published ambition, but I'm sure that we will be above 40% operating margin by 2028. We are a pro-dividend company. We have a very strong ethos for returning the excess capital to our shareholders. And you can see in the bottom that we have now given 325 million crowns back to our shareholders since the first dividend was paid in 2011. We are now at 14 consecutive years of increasing the ordinary dividend. And you can see that while the production and the revenue are growing by something like 10%, the dividend has grown by 21%. And that shows this focus that we have. And what we have done is we've changed from 1 dividend per year to 2 so that we could be more aggressive. And with the growing confidence in the business, we also reduced our liquidity low point. So we will keep driving. Next year will clearly be the 15th year. We have the 10% production and revenue growth through 2030. We have stable costs. So I think that getting to 2030, which gives us 20 consecutive years, is clear. And then it will be a fantastic challenge to see how the early 2030s go. But 25 consecutive years is the target. I said earlier that our engines are smaller and lighter, so they use less fuel. That is the case whether it is the small F-150 pickup truck or the large commercial vehicles for Scania. And this is all on our website. You can see the sustainability section and how we calculate. But we calculate now that we're on track of about 10 million tons of CO2 reduction per year. Put that in perspective. The entire Swedish transportation sector emits 14 million tons per year. Yeah? In Sweden, we tend to sell around 300,000 vehicles per year. Our engines are being used in 1.5 million vehicles per year. So we have a real volume effect. And cumulatively, since we started our production, we have made 64 million tons of CO2 reduction. And our target for 2028 is to get to 100 million. And with a pace of 10 million per year, we'll do it. Yeah, it's a wonderful contribution from a small company of 28 people. So that's about SinterCast. Before we finish, let's look a little bit at the market, and because there's a lot of stuff in the media about alternative technologies, whether it's batteries or fuel cells or different fuels for that matter. But let's see where we start. And this is published statistics from the United States and from Europe, and you see that in both continents, current heavy-duty trucks are more than 96% diesel. Yeah. Again, I like to put things in numbers so we can feel them better. In the United States last year, they sold 276,400 heavy-duty commercial vehicles. 441 of them were electric. Yeah. Closer to home, here was Scania. Last year, Scania sold 96,727 vehicles. 246 of them were electric. Slightly down on 2022 when they sold 262. Yeah? So the ultimate solution, whether it be for cars or for mid-range or for heavy duty, will be a mix. There will be batteries and there will be fuel cells. It will take longer, but there will be a lot of engines. And there will be engines that run on diesel, certainly through 2030, and then there will be the same configuration of engine running on clean fuels, whether it is hydrogen or renewable diesel. And it's a good time to look at the rules because earlier this year, both the United States and Europe published new rules for emissions legislation. And let's start in America. Our American market is slightly bigger than our European market. So this was published by the EPA on 29 March. And you see how much CO2 reduction there has to be for each of the different type of vehicles. So these are, small vans running around in cities for delivery, dump trucks, utility trucks, things like that. But where we work is down in the bottom. So these are the large trucks. Think of the trucks that go from the depot to the grocery store every day. Yeah? And then in the bottom row, the ones with a sleeper cab that will do long haul, maybe driving for 4 or 5 days. Yeah? And you can see that in that sector, out in 2030, if you make the average, something like 11% CO2 reduction. So you can take it another way and say something like 11% of the market may have to be net zero vehicle. And that is relative, the reduction is relative to 2026. Yeah. So what we see is effectively no change through 2029. Today, about 40 or 50% of the heavy-duty trucks use CGI. But all of those trucks are being pushed for higher performance. Yeah? And higher performance means more pressure and more temperature, and they need stronger materials. So one by one, they are all changing to CGI. And I think that we go from something like 40 to 50% today to certainly more than 80% of the trucks using CGI by 2028, 29. So there will be a strong growth in CGI. Maybe some of the market will be consumed by alternative technologies, but clearly the net is a strong growth for SinterCast. And that's the base of our confidence when we say that we'll continue double-digit growth through 2030. So that's America. 29 March, a few weeks later, April 11th, the European Union published its targets for heavy-duty trucks. And what you see here is that by 2030, we have to reduce CO2 by 45%. It's really hard to compare the Europeans and the Americans because the baseline for the Americans was 2026, and the baseline for the European legislation was their previous legislation, which was 2019. Yeah? But anyway, these are then reductions compared to 2019. Has to be minus 65% by 2035 and minus 90% by 2040. And the question is, how will the industry do that? Yeah? And the European Union has formally accepted zero-emission vehicles as electric or fuel cells or engines running with hydrogen instead of petroleum-based diesel. And there is also an active discussion about so-called net zero fuels, where we capture carbon either from the atmosphere or from factories, and we convert that carbon into fuel so that when we burn it, there's net zero. And the big question is, what's 2050? Is 2050 zero, or is 2050 net zero? The European Union has not yet decided on these so-called net zero fuels, and they're scheduled to do that in 2027. And my personal belief, being a part of the industry and talking to a lot of people, is that they will be allowed. And they have already allowed them for passenger vehicles. And passenger vehicles are easy because it means small vehicle, small battery. And trucks are difficult. Large vehicle, large battery, large distances. Yeah? So I'm quite confident that they will also approve net zero fuels for heavy duty. And the Americans already have. Yeah? So I think that's the way to go. And personally, I think that hydrogen has become the leader. Over the last couple of years, there's been a real emphasis on hydrogen. And those engines will look just like a diesel engine of today, just that they'll use hydrogen instead of petroleum-based diesel. And that for SinterCast means perpetuity. So we are working on hydrogen engine programs. This is an MAN 16.2 liter truck where our foundry partner with our technology exclusively supplies the cylinder head. And a few months ago, we joined the organization called Hydrogen Europe, which is therefore increasing the awareness of hydrogen, increasing the manufacturing footprint, the distribution, and the technologies for its use on the road. Yeah? So there's a real movement, and I think that I've always said the 2020s are the decade of development and decision. We don't know yet who will win, and of course it will be a mix, and yet we don't know the ratio of the mix, but I'm very confident that the engine, for all of its benefits and conveniences, will be an important part of that mix. So, concluding, last year we published our top 5 financial targets. We did that in September, and I just come back to them. So we have double-digit growth in our history, and we say that we will maintain that through 2030. I'm confident, for the reasons that we discussed today, that we'll be able to meet that one. We have a history of more than 70% gross margin, and I'm sure that we'll carry that forward. There won't be any difference in the structure of SinterCast. It will continue to be a fixed cost company. It's so highly scalable. You know, if we bring in 2 or 3 more customers, we don't need to increase the headcount. Today we are 28. I will be very surprised if SinterCast has more than 28 people in 5 years. The operating margin, as I mentioned, it was 31.8% at the end of last year. Our target is to be above 40% by 2028. Growing the revenue side, keeping the cost side stable. I'm confident that we'll meet that one and do better. We're at 64 million tons of CO2 contribution, pace of 10 million per year. We'll get to 100 probably in 2027. And we now have 14 years of consecutive increase in the ordinary dividend. Next year we'll make 15. We'll get to 20, and then game on. It'll be a fun challenge in the early 2030s. Thank you.
Steve, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's find a slide with, you have one slide with, the next one with only the logo. One forward.
Yes, I will.
Ah, looking good. And here we are. You got quite a confident aura around you.
Oh, thank you.
That's
Well, I joined in 1991, so it's 33 years now. I'm comfortable in this business.
yeah. Similar to some years back, we were at a ski hotel in Champoluc in Italy, and there was a London guy in the elevator. He happened to be the owner, and oh yeah, so I'm the owner. Yeah, I'm the owner. So welcome, and welcome back. I said, how do you know we're coming back? He just looked at me. Hey, dude, they will come back.
Indeed.
I have another friend, though, a woman, to try to persuade me to go to Ghana to open a gold mine. And I said, well, I foresee some minor problems here. She looked at me, Lars, what can go wrong? But you got the numbers to
We have the
to
track record.
support you.
Yes.
And your graphs certainly speak a strong language. Even so, the share has come down. You're trading at PE 20 now. You were way more expensive before. Would that just be the general more negative market now? Or?
Well, I mean, we're up a little bit. If you go back a year ago, we were trading around 100.
Yeah.
Now we're around 120. So we have increased. We've had a lot of information campaign over the last year. I think there was an awareness thing. But yes, generally the market is nervous about engines and the timeline on engines. I think that gets confused. A lot of people think of us and link us to car. We don't have any car production. A few years ago we had a couple of %, but today it's 0. So we're doing all of this big stuff, and we have to help to explain that better. But generally, I think battery electric, particularly here in Sweden, and the vast majority of our shareholders are Swedish, has had a lot of positive publicity. But it's a difficult road for them. And what we see now is that the market is starting to evolve from euphoria in the early years to realization. And you also see, Tesla, fantastic, but most of the other electric companies have suffered terribly, and for sure we've outperformed them.
Yeah. So, and for that growth, I mean, you've earned your PE 20 and PE 25 as well. Also, we talked about you ran an ad that says here. You said many things. Here we are. And why don't we have more pro investors? And we talked about how will you do that? You're not, I mean, you got some market cap, but there are bigger guys out there, so you can't just go and buy SinterCast shares on Avanza at 100 million in one pop. But you said you could facilitate that, and then I sneaked in, a test question. So will you also issue new stock? And Steve just looked at me and said, no,
Absolutely
we will
not.
not do that.
Oh boy, the last time we did that, and the only reason we had to do that was because of the economic crisis. We did that in 2009, and we didn't think we would have to. So it goes back even further, but we're well beyond that stage. That won't happen. Earlier this year, we had a fund in Germany join us. They hold 80,000 shares. They didn't want to do that on the open market. We reached out to some of our larger shareholders. We cobbled it together, and so it's nice to have them on board. And if a larger investor wanted a larger chunk, of course they're not going to sit on the buy side for a year. But we would be able to arrange a block for them, I'm sure. A lot of the shareholders would see a value in having more funds on our list. And so they would do it, and maybe they're not ready to sell. They would like to wait until the price is higher in 26 and 28 and so on. They're all long-term investors. But getting in a fund or 2 or 3 funds, I'm sure that they would support that.
Yeah. I wanted to have that here because I want to emphasize that SinterCast is a different animal from many other companies that will ruin the world, they say here. but tomorrow, next year, 27. And then they need our money to do that. You are there, and it's typical for a company like you to more go after earnings per share and revenue growth.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of those startup companies, they have two steps. One, that their technology prevails, whether it is electric or fuel cell. Will that really win? And then if fuel cell wins, will their technology be the one that's chosen to support that? So there's two steps in that, and that's tough. That's tough. We were there, We started as a company in the late 1980s, and we had our first production in 1999, and we had our first positive cash flow year in 2006. It's a long way, and the advantage for us is that we were just bringing a new technology to an existing technology. We only had the one step. And this industry is two things. It is conservative, because everybody makes 100,000 vehicles or more. And when you make a mistake, you make 100,000 mistakes. It's a super conservative industry. And the second thing is that the industry is not quite as altruistic as the newspaper headlines suggest. Those guys got to make money. That will come first.
I don't think we believe otherwise either. You had, let's talk about the heavy truck.
Yeah.
And it's got a diesel engine.
Yeah.
And of course, that's SinterCast CGI enhanced. So it's lighter, more efficient. But we start there. But you had, let's run over the ways to make that diesel truck net zero. Not reducing, zero CO2.
Yeah, it's not really an engine thing, it's a fuel thing. And what we see is that the debate has been evolving from the engines to the energy. And, you have to get the carbon out of the fuel. And hydrogen is zero carbon. There will be a little bit of carbon because you still need oil for lubrication in the cylinder bore. So what the European Union has imposed is 3 grams of CO2 per ton kilometer. And today it's something like 100. So it's a massive decrease. But it's all done on the fuel side. And we don't mind if it is current petroleum, if it's biodiesel. All our engines have up to 20% biodiesel. If it is synthetic fuel, or if it is hydrogen. What we need is high pressure in the engine. Yeah, and high pressure means more efficiency.
Question from the audience.
Yes, sir.
You've been around for a long time. I wonder if someone foolishly would try to take a stake of your market. Is it in practical possible? And that's one question. And the other is there on the horizon some magic alloy or graphene or what have you that in a short period of time could disrupt the market?
Yeah, so there is CGI production around the world, and something between 60 and 70% of that is SinterCast. Yeah, so we do have foundries that try to do it by themselves, just relying on good discipline and good operator behavior. So I don't think that someone else doing CGI is a new thing for us. We've been facing that all along. But if you do it on a cost-benefit analysis, I don't think people can beat us. These running fees that we refer to, it works out to something like 2 or 2.5% of the selling price of the casting. So if a foundry tries to make it by themselves and they have more than 3% scrap, then we pay for ourselves. So we're always selling on a cost-benefit basis. There are some foundries that want to present that they have a high technical capability and specifically that they can do it without the help of SinterCast. And we haven't been able to overcome that, but still we will be the dominant player. As the market grows, maybe we get diluted from 65% to 60 or something like that, but still we'll have a clear growth. New alloys, no, I don't see it at all. There isn't a development in that direction. CGI was first observed in 1948 and patented in 1948, and there hasn't been anything to challenge it since then. It was just that it was so difficult to produce that nobody could do it until the 1990s when we had good computer processing capabilities. So I don't see at all that another material pops up. The aluminum guys have done really well on passenger cars, and they sometimes say we'll come to the big trucks as well, but they won't. They simply don't have the strength. When we speak of strength, think of a coat hanger. Yeah, it's about 1 square millimeter. And how much material can you put on the bottom of the coat hanger before it breaks? And aluminum is like 25 kilos. And the normal iron is like 25 or 30 kilos. CGI is 45. And the next thing you have to do is you talk about, because nothing breaks the first time you use it, right? Things break because you use them over and over. They fatigue. And it's like when, you took a beverage can as a young boy or young girl and you bend it back and forth. It doesn't break the first time, but if you bend it enough, it will break. Same thing happens. Elevator cables, ships, engines. Everything breaks because of this repeated use. And the question now on my coat hanger is how much can I put on and off forever and be sure that it will never break? And we know that with aluminum and the normal iron, it's like 25 kilos, it breaks the first time. Maybe if I put 20, I can do it 100,000 times. And if I put 15, I can do it 1,000,000 times. But, how much can I put and it will never break? And that number is 11. And with CGI, the number is 22. We have double of the fatigue strength. And that's what the OEMs use to make their engines with higher pressure and higher temperature and confidence that they will never fail.
Yeah.
When was the last time you heard of an engine
And that's
fail?
why the CGI engine is lighter, because it's still robust enough.
Well, yeah, I mean, instead, now I have 1 square millimeter and I can do 11 with the normal iron. With CGI, I can do 22 kilos. So if you want to do the same with the normal iron, you have to use 2 square millimeters. And that's what you do in an engine. Maybe the wall thickness is 10 millimeters. In CGI, it will be 8. And that's the saving. It's the saving in weight and also the saving in size.
Time is flying. One more short question. Anyone else also? You could take.
Yeah.
We have Rutger and then Ole. 2 questions.
Is there, what opportunities are there for yourself to develop the product and the process?
So we're focused primarily on the big ones. You can't really go to off-road because the volumes are so small. We're focused very much on engines for alternative fuels because our big opportunity to growth is to be the winner post-2030 in what type of technology is used. And we're also working on small engines for passenger vehicles. In the world, there's like 100 million engines made every year, and 90 million of them are small for passenger cars. So together with our biggest foundry customer in Brazil, we've been developing an engine for that because they will all become hybrid. And when you have a hybrid, you want a really small engine. You want it small for packaging so it can fit in the vehicle together with the batteries and the other things. And you want it light, and you want it low cost. And compared to aluminum, which is the preferred choice for small engines, CGI is only about half. So that's a real opportunity for us. We did a demonstration program. Maybe next time I come back, we can do that one. At the moment, there are some discussions with car companies, but no decisions yet. So that's something that we have to keep pushing on. But that could really open it up.
Last question.
Yeah, I like your story, and it's really impressive. But you had a slide where you showed your segments, where you were in the big trains and the big trucks and so on. But I was missing the marine engines. Maybe not the super tankers, but there's a lot of marine engines that should benefit from the same properties. Is there a decision that you have not chosen not to go in there, or do you have that in front of you?
We are in marine engines. I didn't mention it, so thank you. It's a good opportunity to bring it out. So we work primarily with MAN, who do the big ones for freighters and for cruise ships. For more than 20 years, we've been doing the piston rings for those engines. It ranges from 250 millimeter diameter to 980 millimeter diameter, so we also do the really big ones. And 2 years ago, we started to do the cylinder liners. So the cylinder liners have now been specified for new engines for 350 millimeter bore diameter, 450 millimeter bore diameter, and 460. So in MAN, you know that business S35, S45, S46 engines. But the problem is those big engines, they make one a day. And so we're in there and it's contributing and it will grow. The absolute volume from that will grow, but as the whole market grows, I don't think the percent will grow. But we'll get more volume from it. Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you, Steve.
Really good. Thank you.
Pressing.
Thanks.
Steve, you have time to stick around 10 minutes?
I will, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just sit here and keep your mic. I'm going to skip forward to a CCS part of the
Okay,
ProHearings Lookout.
Yeah, great.
And I'll ask you for a view on that. Because it's time for the last presentation of the day, and that is the ProHearings Lookout. We will do this in English this time for Steve's sake and more English audience this time. So I will start by skipping forward to the CCS, carbon capture storage, right? Slides, and then we'll back up again. Okay, intro to carbon and vehicles. This is about cars, but there's thesis and antithesis, and talking with people on a Saturday night at an event somewhere, you get a reaction to the everything will be electric, and you have the back end. And let's first address that. It's not as easy as I thought it would be. But then those people say, hey, Tesla will never take back. It will always be worse than a lean diesel car because it takes so much CO2 to produce it. It's a heavy car. So I looked around, and to my surprise, no 2PA, of course you get thousands of hits on an issue like this, but there's no one that doesn't tweak it quite a bit. So this is one attempt. I don't like it, but I just put it out there to guide us some. You have a standard gasoline engine, and first, what's the standard? But production of that vehicle, 5.6 tons of CO2. Then you have a battery electric, 8.8 tons. So that's something. Then, if you look at it further, they don't publish that today. But Northvolt's so far only customer, and they own 16% of it. Northvolt is owned to 16% by Volkswagen. And when you put a Northvolt battery in, that's way better than put in a China battery in for most instances. And I would bet it's hugely better than a Tesla. So that's the first thing you have to look at. Then you have to look at the grid electricity. So a couple of things there is you can't beat an electric car for well-to-wheel efficient. We talked about that before. It's up to 85–90% of the power that you consume from the wall outlet goes not only into the car but onto the wheels. So it's super high chain efficiency. So a liter of diesel contains like 8 kilowatt hours, and also a big diesel car. Diesel car would take 0.6 diesel, and that would convert to like 5 kilowatt hours per 10 kilometers. On electric, it's 1.5, so it's very efficient. But you have to look at the whole chain. 500 grams CO2 per kilowatt hour would not be true in Sweden. Sweden has a great power grid, and we're already virtually zero. It's 1.5% or something when something goes wrong. It's almost net zero. So that goes to the bottom there. Sorry, it's in Swedish, but it makes way less sense to go electric if the grid isn't close to zero. It's still good, but it's much faster. And you know, to give a round number, I would say if you do 20,000 kilometers a year, the electric car will pass the diesel or petrol car, emitting less CO2 in like 2 years or something. But it depends on where you are. I was on Gran Canaria. They just have some, you know, ridiculously small windmills. The rest is oil. So there's not a great case for driving an electric car there. But what's happening, that's still not on the map, and I can't get it through my head why this is kept so quiet. Carbon capture storage, other carbon capture convert. It's making big grounds, and our neighbors in the West, Norway, is working a lot on this. They still keep it low, but it's getting bigger and bigger. What was Equinor called before?
Statoil.
Right, my old employer. So that's Norwegian government for you. They do it their way. But, you know, they're there to prove this is not small startup. It's major money going into carbon capture. It's very complex because it can have one cost on one manufacturing facility and another one in another place. Here's the second case for this. This is Heidelberg Cement. And on a big facility like this, it's more and more efficient, and it's gaining ground to capture carbon straight at the facility. And here's the third example. This has not been so much in the news yet, but my understanding, this is from Dagens Industri. They usually get it right. and what is it? The budget from the government sets aside 36 billion SEK for CCS, bio-CCS negative. One example of that, I'm pretty sure, is Värtaverken, where you burn biofuel, but then they suck out carbon from the air and they go net minus. So and this will take Sweden to net zero. If we look at concrete here, the next example is there another way than hybrid and H2 green steel to make fossil-free steel? You could do it the old way and take out the carbon, and that would compete with the other method, that is take out all the fossil fuel, use hydrogen, or they of course want all our very valuable water power for no money, because that solves their problem, but that leaves Sweden in a tight spot though. This is being debated now with hybrid and H2 green steel, because hybrid got the first concession of water power, and they gave them that, according to an industry source I have, for 35 öre per kilowatt hour. Now you see we will have to pay 80 öre for nuclear power. So we actually need the water power. It's ours. It's Sweden's. It's not hybrids. So you have to look at this. They cannot get. And secondly, water power is actually more valuable than nuclear because you can regulate it remotely even. If you have more wind, you need more water. So there's no other way. And that's why it's a stop now. You don't hear anything. So hybrid needs way more. They haven't gotten it. H2 Green Steel have got nothing yet. And at the end of the day, they would need to I guess, build their own nuclear power plants. But that will be at another cost. And that's not what they promised their investors. That are plenty and they're big. It's our pension money. It's around the world. So this is a big issue. And this was a long road into the question to you, sir. CCS, when it takes off, you see with the EU taxation, you could also make the case that you could just keep supplying the diesel from the gas stations, but it includes the cost of taking it out, and it's guaranteed. So when you fill up 100 liters of diesel, the price includes that the maker, the delivery of that diesel, includes taking away the carbon, which would be, it's actually a catch-all. You did not have that on your slides, though, Steve.
Well, we talked about renewable diesel, and that is taking carbon from some source, perhaps a factory. The so-called second-generation biofuels are using animal fat and used cooking oil rather than the first generation, which were using food stock, whether it was wheat or corn or whatever. And so I think all of the different raw materials to make renewable diesels are super important. And carbon capture and storage, there's a lot of models out there about how you can convert that into a liquid fuel. And then the wonderful thing about a liquid fuel is that we don't have to develop a distribution network because we already have it. We use the same pipelines, we use the same petrol stations, and we use the same filling techniques. So it will be also the cheapest infrastructure to implement. So no, I'm very bullish on clean fuels, and I think that carbon capture and storage is an important part of it.
Okay. Yep. Thanks for that. I will now go back to the start again. So I know you're on a busy schedule. When you leave, remember to give your mic to Nikita.
Okay.
We had a mic flying to Denmark last year.
Thank you, friends.
Jag kommer nog att hoppa, vi är redan 12.05, så jag kör lite grann i den här presentationen, inte hela, jag sparar några saker. Så jag kommer att hoppa över lite. Jag tyckte det här var viktigt, och CCS är ett gigantiskt fält som får många implikationer, och det här är ju big money implications. Hur mycket har hybrid och Green Steel tagit in av investerarna hittills, och säg att det inte är det smartaste sättet. Var ska de få elen ifrån? Etc. etc. Men här är den vi brukar ha med, och vad hände under sommaren? Ja, en sak är ju att vi tittar på 10-årsräntan som egentligen sätter, det är ju borde vara och är oftast basen för P-talen man kan sätta på alla aktier. Och 10-årsräntan i Sverige var ju 0. Hade Ingves jagat ner den till fram till december 2021. Men den har fallit i sommar. 2,4 till 1,88 har vi här. Den ska vara ganska exakt där nu också. Dock har det har inte lett till någon generell uppgång den här gången, men allt annat lika så är det en stor nedgång. Jag hoppar den där. Men nu har vi i alla fall fått en ny räntebana här, och det verkar ju relativt safe bet att reporäntan i december är 2,75. Den är ju 3,5 nu. Sen tycker jag det som blir spännande att följa för oss under 2025 är var stoppar det här, och det vet man inte. Alltså det går ju inte att få ett svar på vad som egentligen orsakar inflation, och till det själv som ju är en överlägsen kommunikatör jämfört med förra riksbankschefen erkänner det här, säger att det är trubbigt och så vidare. Men var stoppar det här om inflationen nu? Det är ju en rejäl engångshöjning och vi jämför oss med mycket högre nummer. Vad händer om inflationen ligger kvar nu Var tänker han sluta sänka då? Jag antar att man inte tänker gå till 0 eller absolut inte minus, men hur långt ner räntan går, det får vi se. Apropå stora satsningar som går snett. Jag har lite grann väntat på det normala i cykeln när man kommer ut ur en negativ period, är att det blir risk-on igen. Och då kommer de här framtidssatsningarna och nya tekniker som det finns gott om och får investeringar och pengar. Det är ju fortsatt mycket motigt på att sälja nya aktier och delvis är väl det en följd av att det har varit för enkelt. Korpfirmorna har gjort hårresande, fruktansvärda emissioner, men vi har alla bränt oss så att säga och egentligen kastat ut alla ägg. Man kan tycka att några borde vara kvar, men det är svårt nu. Och det som istället surfar upp här är ju att det som borde vara smart money också får det kämpigt. Northvolt har tagit in gigantiska summor. De har Goldman Sachs, de har som sagt Volkswagen. Volkswagen har ju ett extra skäl att vara storägare i Northvolt. Men nu går det trögt och då är det inte de här dödsfallen som TV tjatar om. Det är ju en sak och det är tråkigt. Men försäljningen är låg, de har det kämpigt och de kan inte hålla sin värdering. Jag hoppas det här går bra för det är ett väldigt bra case och det är synd att till exempel ingen tittar på var kommer batteriet ifrån i Teslan och hur var det med miljön på det, för ett Northvolt-batteri blir väldigt bra och i den mån det sitter ett Northvolt-batteri i Volkswagen så är det en sak de borde marknadsföra, men det gör de inte än, men det kommer säkert. Så Dagens Industri är ju lite, de grillar ordentligt här och de hittar alltid den rätta bilden för att illustrera det också. Men de kämpar. Och det var ju det som Steve Dawson pratade om också här, att det går trögt helt enkelt. Jag bytte till svenska nu för vi våra engelsmän klev iväg. Inte bara Northvolt. Varta i Tyskland fluktuerar hej vilt på rykten, upp och ner, ner och upp. Det här är ett brand name, så det är en så att säga brandad konkurs som makes the news. Jag gissar att det här har med att skattekrediten man fick under covid är upp till betalning. Och då blir man av det med en tajmad konkurs. Men också en påminnelse om att det är kämpigt nu. Såg du den här? Trodde regeringen var våra vänner, höll jag på att säga. Ränteavdragen ska skiktas och en sak som det snackas om kommer att strykas är ränteavdrag för ett lån som backar aktieköp, belånad portfölj. Då blir det inget avdrag. Så de har ju tidigare sagt att man är emot det här för att det ger ju effekter som att du vill placera lånet någonstans där du kan dra av räntan och sen använda det till det du har tänkt använda det till. För i början på augusti så hade vi ju en jättesättning. Och, alltså det går ju inte ens att förklara. 10% ner bara på ett par dagar. Och då var det ett lite sämre nummer på New Jobs i USA och då sa man det blir hardlandning. Sen så gick några dagar, man somnade om och nu är kurserna tillbaka. Och det löjliga med det här är att det har kommit värre siffror än den som sänkte det här 10% nyligen. Men nu bryr man sig inte längre. Utan nu är det här som heter Goldilocks, alltså att det kommer att softlanda. Det blir ingen krasch. Och det finns ju också räntor att sänka. Men jag vet inte vad man ska säga ens. Det bara bevisar att det är omöjligt att egentligen titta på det här och det är helt hysteriskt egentligen. Det är någon som har sagt att aktiemarknaden är specifikt ihopsatt för att lura nästan alla nästan hela tiden. Av någon orsak. Men det går inte att förklara. Normalt sett brukar ju alla stora analyshus, det var någon som sökte jobb och så sa han, men jag kan inget om det här, och sa Goldman Sachs. Perfekt, det behöver du inte. Vi berättar för dig vad du ska säga. Och gärna efteråt då. Men det är svårförklarat. Om vi släpper ekonomi lite grann, om ni inte har gjort det redan, sök på Karin Götblad, SVT Play. Det syns hur besjälad hon är och vår nya brottslighet här där vi skickar ut 13-14-åriga killar på kontraktsmord i Norge och Danmark. Ja. Det är trist och när det dök upp för ett par veckor sedan så kom det något, då hade sossarna ett möte och sa att vi har kommit på det här. Vi ska dela ut en broschyr i skolorna. Sen nu kom Shekarabi tillbaka på ett lite bättre sätt, men det här är ju fruktansvärt. Och hon har ju sedan länge något hon kallar projekt pojke, att det gäller ju att hitta problemet så nära källan som möjligt, och det är ju de här vilsna unga killar i förorterna. Och ja, det är ju kopplat till invandring och utanförskap, givetvis. Men se på det. Och det är nog dags. Jag måste också säga, det räcker inte med hårdare straff. Vad har en 12, 13, 14-årig kille för något? Obefintligt konsekvenstänkt. Han är här och ny. Han bryr sig inte om ifall han får sitta 1 år, 2 år eller 3 år. Det är en senare fråga. Han vill ha status nu. Så det är klart att det blir ju preventivt så tillvida att så länge han sitter på anstalt så kommer han inte att skjuta någon annan. Men hon har rätt i att det behövs mer. Jag är ytterst snabb här. Det här var väl kul? Ha? Right back. Måste jag säga att jag bejakar. Och det verkar inte gå på något annat sätt. Trist. Men vi hoppas Kyiv får sina långdistansvapen med tillstånd att skjuta längre. Jag brukar vara noga med källor och inte använda olika udda källor, men jag har faktiskt abonnerat och blivit stödmedlem på en nättidning som heter Kyiv Independent. Jag följde den lite grann och sen kunde jag inte hitta några hårresande fel. Och en del saker har de som man inte får med. Så om ni slår upp det så finns det ett dagligt mejl där en en ukrainsk stab ger sitt take på kriget. Men de är väl förankrade. Och de har ett vecko också som heter What the fuck is wrong with Russia? Som tar det, alltså bearbetar den frågan och det är ju svårt att helt hitta det. Nu är det nästan klart. Det här är screenshot med iPhone på tvn klockan 5:50 i morse. Och frågan jag ställer i mitt kommande nyhetsbrev är What the fuck is wrong med Sverige? Vi lyckas ju ha 3:e högst arbetslöshet i Europa. Understed Tyskland och Polen på 3,7 eller något, jag tar inte med den bilden här. Detta trots att det rullar ut 80-procentiga lönebidrag för att anställa personer i Sverige. Hur lyckas vi göra det här? Det är otroligt udda och direkt konstigt när man tänker på det. Så vi har kommit en bit från när Stefan Löfven sa att han skulle ha Europas lägsta arbetslöshet någonstans när han
2020.
Stack upp. Det här är det sista. Sen är det lunch. Ett boktips. Jag läser den här. Tänka snabbt och tänka långsamt. Kahneman, han är ganska känd. Och det här måste jag säga är, när man läser den så förstår man diskussionen på lördag kväll bättre, man förstår sin omvärld bättre och man förstår sig själv bättre. Det som ligger i det här är ju, om man pratar med en lärare till exempel, som jag hade förmånen att göra förra söndagen, en kommunal lärare, hon sa ju det att ungarna koncentrerar sig inte längre, och det finns ju siffror på att för 15 år sedan så koncentrerade vi oss i genomsnitt 2 minuter innan vi bytte ämne. Nu är den siffran nere i 47 sekunder. Vi är helt fragmenterade. Det betyder att vi inte hinner analysera någonting, så saker och ting blir mer och mer komplicerade. Men vårt attention span går mot, om det var bra förut så är det här nu, och här nere är en guldfisks attention span och vår riktning är så. Då har ju hjärnan, allt det här är i boken, det tycker jag omåttligt intressant. Vi har ett automatiskt system som hanterar saker åt oss. Och sen har vi, när vårt systemet löser det mesta, som att ta kaffekoppen eller svara på en fråga, men ofta det systemet förenklar kraftigt, annars vi får in för mycket impulser. Så det bara säger inte en skippare, det drar bara en grov slutsats. Men man har också en trigger när steg 1 säger aha, det här går inte längre. Då går man in på det aktiva systemet. Det är väldigt jobbigt att använda, och var och en av oss har annorlunda punkter på när steg 1 och steg 2 går in. Och det här spelar lite grann på samma sätt som det här marshmallow-testet. Ni vet, de 4-åringar det går bra för. Du lägger en marshmallow framför dem och så säger du, vill du ha en nu eller vill du ha 2 imorgon? De som väljer 2 imorgon går det bra för. De som tar en går det inte lika bra. Nu gör vi ett sånt test. Jag ger er nu en fråga som ni ska lösa. Vi har ett brännbollsträ och vi har en boll. De tillsammans kostar 110 kronor. Brännbollsträet kostar 100 kronor mer än bollen. Vad kostar bollen? Hur många tycker 10 kronor? Hälften gör fel på det. Här gjorde ingen fel. Utan vad är priset? Vad kostar bollen? Nu safear ni. Den kostar 5 kronor. Det står i boken och testet, nu riggar jag lite grann. Man förstod ju att något var fel på det här. Men det blir så därför att bollen kostar 5 kronor, träet kostar 100 kronor mer, 105 plus 5 är 110. Väldigt många svarar 110 och steg 1 klipper på 110 om man kör lite mer sneaky än vad jag gjorde. Så boken är full av det. Det finns också förankringseffekter. Alltså det här, och nu är vi inne på manipulation. Om jag säger till er att jag har hört att det högsta redwoodträdet i Kalifornien är 266 meter. Jag säger bara att jag har hört det, ingen mer så här. Och sen får ni gissa på hur högt det är. Då kommer ni att gissa ganska högt. Men det är ju helt overifierat. Så om jag vill få er att gissa att de är väldigt höga ska jag bara häva ur med något sånt där. Trump, expert på det här. Och annat. Om jag säger att det är 40 meter kommer ni att gissa mycket lägre. Det här är en automatisk ankring som hjärnan gör. Så, den där boken. Den finns en ljudbok på Spotify, det kör jag faktiskt. Mycket trevlig. Missa inte nästa avsnitt. Och nästa avsnitt av ProHearings är fredag 09.20. Denna lokal. Nu är det lunch. Tack för idag.